season to be jolly. Fa la 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 la. Sing the beat and take the word. Fa la 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 la. Sing the ancient Christmas carol. Fa la 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 la.
Good morning. How are you guys? Good, good. Hey, I want to read for you a letter I found from a child to Santa. It's from last Christmas, not from yesterday's event, and it involves involves his disappointment with Santa. Listen to this. Dear Santa, I am writing, R-I-T-I-N-G, this on the day after Xmas, and I'm very sad. I only received one of two presents I asked for. Since, S-E-N-S-E, you ate my cookies, C-O-O-K-Y-S, I will assume, A-S-O-O-M, that my missing was, W-H-Z, a mistake, M-I-S-S space T-A-K-E. I will give you 1 week to fix this. Signed, Jeremy. Santa wrote back. Dear Jeremy, I'm sorry you're disappointed with your presents. You asked for two very expensive presents, and Santa can only do so much. You need to learn to be grateful for what you have, not upset about what you don't. If you continue to complain, I will have no choice but to add you to the naughty list. Signed, Santa. To which Jeremy wrote back. Dear Fatty, your threats don't scare me. I played your game and you did not deliver. This is not okay. I give you 1 week and then you will pay. Signed, Jeremy. P.S. I don't know why you care that it's so expensive when you have elf slaves to make things for you. I think you're the one on the naughty list this year because you use slaves. Yeah, Jeremy needs to go to jail. Okay, so anyways, just kidding. Santa wrote back. Dear Jeremy, you are a bad little boy, in the understatement of the world. Because you cannot be happy with what you have, I have asked your parents to take away your Wii U. Now, you have nothing. There's one parent's like, that's my parenting style. That's my Santa. Once you learn to be grateful, perhaps you can have it back. I'm very disappointed in you, Jeremy. You will need to be an extra good little boy this year if you ever want to make it back on the nice list. Hey, this holiday season, I think that is obviously an extreme case of what modern America looks like. It really is. But it's hilarious because probably in every one of our homes, whether when we were kids or even now as we reflect on the holiday season in Christmas, there's that obvious reality where oftentimes we get distracted by a lot of different things. And kids are not the only ones that get distracted by a lot of things. All of us get distracted. And we get distracted all throughout the year, but we also get distracted specifically in Christmas time. And this season, we're doing a series called Travel Light. And one of the things that we want to tackle, at least in today's message, is the idea that oftentimes it's the heaviness comes from distraction. The heaviness comes from a lack of focus. The heaviness doesn't, as we talked about last week, come from Jesus. It comes from our schedules and our time and our money, all focused on the wrong thing. So we want to tackle, not from a broad sense, but from a very specific sense, this idea of being distracted. Not for kids, but for us. Because the truth is, we can't lead our kids and we can't lead our greater community at large if we are not focused ourselves. And oftentimes, we're more pulled into the culture than we do pulling the culture into what we believe. And so we just want to acknowledge that this morning, this holiday season, and really step into what is the danger of distraction. If you have your Bibles, open up to Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10, as you get there, I want to just remind you of this story. It's an incredible story, but really it speaks to so many of us. In fact, yesterday, we're going to read a story about Mary and another gal named Martha. And it's two people that Jesus did a lot of life with. It seems to be, as we read this story, that this is early on in their relationship, one of the first encounters with Jesus, Mary, and Martha. Before they formed a tight bond, a tight relationship, these ladies would be with Jesus at the end when he comes back from the grave. They're one of the first on site. And so they're around. They're very present, active in the gospel story. But their friendship is formed over the life of his ministry. And what's beautiful about this is Jesus going over to their house. Hospitality in their culture, much like ours, relationships typically are stronger if you host somebody. They're stronger because you trust them enough for them to come over to your house, but they also grow stronger in hospitality. Would you say that is true of anybody that comes over to your house or anybody that you go over to their house? Would you just nod your head so that I can tell that you're paying attention? Thank you so much. The guy in the back that's sleeping, if you could wake. No, I'm just kidding. As we dive into this story, I want you to see this interaction because most of us can relate to one of the two ladies. And the truth is, today I'm not talking to the distant, rebellious sinner. I'm actually talking to the person that, generally speaking, makes the right choices. Not always. You're not perfect. We already know that theology. And you know that. But the truth is, you also know that generally speaking, you do generally make the right choice. And oftentimes this holiday season, you're the person that hosts. You're the person that cooks. And you're also the person that finds yourself in the kitchen the most. And the truth is, oftentimes after the holiday season, you find yourself more bitter than you are grateful. Because you're sick of being the one that does so much of the work, whether we're talking immediate family, extended family, friends, church. This feeling arises in all communities because we've all done a group project. Remember high school? You remember when it's like, hey, it's time to team up, and there's the kids in the class that have already picked out their partners, not because they want to partner with them, but because they want that partner to do what? All the work. And you realize the first time, sure, you want to be with little Johnny who immediately picked you out because that made you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. But you've done a project with Johnny before. And you know what it's like when you partner with Johnny. He didn't do anything. In fact, the only time he has any creative ideas is the night before the project's due. And you've already done the project. But Johnny has strong opinions on how the project should go, even though Johnny didn't pay attention for 3 weeks until the day before the test or the day before the presentation. Some of you are being very triggered by a long-term memory. So when that project comes up again, you start to build wisdom. This time you don't have the courage to tell little Johnny no, and you partner up with him again. The same thing happens. 3 weeks go by, Johnny asserts himself. You have to change elements of the project, and on the presentation, you don't do as good as you could do because the truth is, you weren't really ready for all these new additions. Well, Johnny was because he's used to it. So Johnny thrives. You look like you're the one that didn't pay attention the whole time, and the truth is, you've been working on the project for 3 weeks, and this homie just showed up 3 hours ago. So the third time, you finally grow the courage. The problem is, though, you've never addressed it with Johnny. And so by the time you grow the courage to stand up to him, you actually sound like the person that is the jerk. So time comes for you to, right, do the project. Johnny immediately starts to stand over to you, and you look at him and says, I don't want to be your partner, you lazy bum. And Johnny looks at you, his eyes wide open, because Johnny has a tender heart. He's just a little procrastinator. And he looks at you, and you look back at him, and you can tell Johnny walks away hurt, and now you're hurt, and you don't know what to do. Has this scenario played out in your family's, not high school story, but Christmas story? Has this played out maybe just a couple weeks ago at Thanksgiving? Has this played out in many different areas of your life? And some of you are like, I'm more Johnny in the story. Well, we've got a message for you, but it's next week. You better not skip, Johnny. Luke chapter 10. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened up her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was, say it with me, but Martha was distracted by all the preparation that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her, say it with me, help me. Anybody ever been there? Help me. Help me. Everybody ate. I'm the only one in the kitchen. I actually cooked the food. Hypothetical. 41. Before the Brady Bunch said it, the Bible said it. Martha, Martha. The Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Can I just step back as a leader of a church where yesterday we threw an event where 154 people came to, actually I think it was 162 people, including staff, came together to serve our community. Can I tell you, we needed a lot of Marthas yesterday. Can I just step into this moment and say, that this is not a conversation about shame, this is a conversation about perspective. So if you are the worker bee, if you are the one that will do things behind the scene when no one watches, if you're the one that works your tail off and is sweating, and the most of the time, it doesn't even bother you if anybody steps in, because the truth is, you were created to serve, and you know that. But there are times when you grow weary. There are times when you feel unseen. There are times when you feel as though, hey, nobody else is stepping in. When do I finally get to break? When do I finally get to socialize? If that's you, can I just lean into this for a moment, because I believe that there's some things in this text that are extremely helpful for how you actually get the help you need, but also see the greater perspective. Martha, Martha. All these things are not nearly as important as what Mary chose. You know, it's hard to know the deliberate intent of Mary. It's hard to know whether or not if Jesus wasn't there, she typically would be in the kitchen, or she would typically be helping around the house. It's hard to know whether or not in this group project that they typically share the responsibility, and because of the person of Jesus, Mary seems to be distracted by the most important thing, and as a result of that, there's an extra burden to Martha, or if this is a common trend. But either way, I think the principle that Jesus is trying to get to Martha is the same. I think it flows differently. I think the application may be different. And we don't have the whole story, but we have enough to learn a lesson. And the first is this. If you're taking notes, I just want to point out to you that what Martha is distracted by is not sinful things. We have the prodigal son. Martha is not the prodigal daughter. We have a lot of stories of people that struggle and grow terrible reputations because of the gross sin in their lives. And there's these radical transformations. And in modern church, we typically play a video and you sit in your chairs and you're like, oh my gosh, that person went from the darkest place on planet Earth to being saved by Jesus. And what a story that is. And man, I just want to be around those stories, because the truth is, it's not my story. And your story is more of a drop of Jesus along the way and a slow transformation. And I just stand here before you to tell you that God writes different stories. Every one of them are beautiful, and every one of them are transformational. And regardless of what story you have in the room, you can learn from this principle in this moment right here. And that is, if the enemy can't destroy you, he will distract you. And so for many of us that don't have the destroyed story, because the truth is there's just something in us. There's something in us that just generally speaking, you are imperfect. You are not Jesus. You will never be Jesus. And if you generally make the good choices and you seem to think that you're better than other people, that's a whole different conversation for a different day. But I'm just telling you that Jesus would be the first one to rebuke you in love. But if that's not you, because if you remember from the prodigal story, It's a story that Jesus made up. There's a younger brother, and there's also a what? Older brother. And the older brother is the one that you would most relate to in that story. And you'd relate to him because he's frustrated that the dad runs to the prodigal son who stole his inheritance. And in that is embraced by the father, and a party is thrown, and a party had never been thrown for the older brother. And it feels as though the rebellious son is more rewarded than the son that made the right choices. And in there's a bitterness and an envy towards the younger brother. And I stand here to tell you that the same traits in that story exist in this one. And so if the enemy can't destroy you, he will distract you. And oftentimes what he's going to distract you with is the good things that you're doing and how worthy you are because of the good things you're doing. And in your worthiness, your eyes may not drift completely away from God, but just slightly. And we know from the Peter walking on the water, even just a slight drift from Jesus' eyes, what makes you sink, eventually drown. So in all of these stories, there's a subtle reminder to each and every one of us who by and large make the right choice. Number one, if the enemy can't destroy you, he will distract you. And what you're going to get distracted with, he knows, are not sinful things, are not drastically rebellious things. He knows what he can get you all tied up in are the good things. The everyday things that matter. They matter to the people around us. They matter to us. They matter to our families and our friends. They matter. And if they're not done, it does impact the quality of our lives. It does impact the quality of lives around us. But in doing so, and in participating in these things, and slightly shifting our focus away from Jesus, and because it's so slight, we don't even notice it, in doing all of the good things, we remember the great thing and begin to drown slowly but surely over time, embittering our hearts and ultimately changing the why behind the what we're doing. If he can't destroy you, he will what? Distract you. It's been said recently that an American can't go 10 minutes without picking this up. And so now enter into the story a modern cultural moment. You won't find a verse that says, don't let your iPhone get between you and your family. Not in NLT, not in NIV, not in the Message, not in any translation. I've searched. It's not in there. It's not that Jesus didn't know Steve Jobs wasn't coming. It's just that when Jesus wrote the scriptures, he didn't have that problem. But there are principles that help us to realize. One of those principles is what Paul wrote to the church at Colossae in chapter 3, verse 2, when he said, set your eyes on things above. The great things are the eternal things. The good things are all around us, but the great things are those that last for all eternity. Those are the only things that are categorized as great. All the good things are things that we have that are temporary. And there are real good things. And there are things that matter each and every day here on temporary earth. But if we focused on the temporary as citizens of heaven, then we lose perspective, albeit shift away from Jesus and slowly begin to drown. Because we weren't made for this world, my friends. We were made for a world that's set apart from this one. And through faith in Jesus, we've been promised heaven. And in that promise, we have the hope of it. That means in the good times, the bad times, and the ugly times here on earth, we cling to that hope, and we have to remember our purpose. And the great things of this world are what are eternal. And so we just have to reorient our lives around what is eternal. Because for some of us, the enemy wants to destroy us. And there are many sermons and stories that speak directly to that moment. This just isn't one of them. This one is about those of us who struggle with getting distracted. Our eyes slightly off-kiltered, like a car that loses alignment. Not so much that it does a U-turn, but it just drifts into another lane. As I make these next 2 points, I am going to try something. It's an illustration that, if I'm quite frank, I'm not sure will work. I'm going to turn my phone from silent to It's going to give me every notification. It's going to give me every text that I get. I could get a ding every 4 seconds, or we could go 5 minutes and not have a single one. I have no clue how this is going to go. But I'm just doing it because I want you to see that as I'm trying to make my points today, I want you to see how many times there's an interruption. How many times that when you and your spouse are talking about a scheduling matter or a conflict or just saying, hey babe, how's your moment right now? Or how many times that you are in a deep reflection, right? A good moment where it's just you and your thoughts. It's just you and that space where you have to deal with what's real. And in that moment you get a ding. And the truth is that space is hard and that space is something you avoid. So the second you get an opportunity to get out of it, you run from it. And so you're distracted and you're distracted and you're distracted. And because you never deal with the space, either in your marriage or just in your own personal life, this works for everybody. Single, married, right, divorced, every single person needs that space to reflect, right, to come to a place where you're connected with God. You give grace to yourself. You get forgiveness for yourself. But then you also give your space, your bitter heart, an opportunity to be refreshed and restored. Because forgiven people forgive people. Because healed people help heal people. And if you never get healed and you never feel forgiven, then you ultimately, that embitterment starts to change your relationships externally. So if you're never in that space, you watching where I'm going with this? If you're never in that space and you're ding, 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 so let's try. I don't know how this is going to go. It could be every 4 seconds, but if it flops, I just want you to be like, hey, great try, okay? I just got a text. Shoot, that would have been perfect. All right. It is on ring. Any notification, any text message. My fantasy football group chat is about to go off because it's almost 10 a.m. There's one. There's two. This may not last very long. Let me make a couple points as we go through this. If you're taking notes on your note sheet, will you just write this down? A distracted person. All right, now people in the congregation are starting to text me. I see what you're doing. Oh, joke's on you guys. Every one of those is all you. A distracted person is easily led by the wrong influences. A distracted person is easily led by the wrong influences. Who do gangs pick off? Who do they pick off? Let's think about it. You think what they're looking for is like, hey, is mom and dad at home? Yes? Oh, come on, come check this gang out. That doesn't seem to be the family dynamic of a gang member. Oh, do your parents love you? Oh, come on over to this gang. Do you know who a gang is a countercultural, counter-nuclear family for those who feel rejected and outcast. And they find solace in the fact that even if they're doing the wrong thing, they feel right in this family. That's what a gang targets. So when you're distracted and when you don't have what you need, and when you're not focused on the things that reinforce your value and your purpose, you can be led anywhere. Find somebody that's distracted and give them a direction, regardless of whether it's the right one or not. That's also you guys. Thank you for making my illustration work. I started out mad, and as I go, I realize that you are a partner in this illustration. Thank you so much. You can lead somebody who's distracted. And the sad thing is healthy people want to take distracted people and focus them on the right things. But unhealthy people want to leverage the distraction for their own game and for their own agenda. And so the world out there, right, where all these businesses want to profit off you, they're looking for people who are distracted. Financially, people that don't have a budget are distracted financially. I've told you this, but for a year I was out of ministry. In 15 years, all I've done is ministry, and I spent 1 year at Sam's Club in between kind of my journey, about halfway through that 15-year journey. And one of the things that totally blew my mind was how much time and energy a bunch of people who got paid a lot of money spent on what products to put in front of you, right? There's aisles, and every product there is a group of people that spend time talking about what's the most effective product this month, and they track your footing, and they know exactly where you go in the store, and they know exactly like what your purpose is, and they have it all statistically laid out, and then they make decisions where to place things. Well, guess what? You pick up stuff you don't have money for, because if you're distracted, they can get you to buy anything. So I'm telling you, this is across the board. Those who are distracted can be led by the wrong influences. Number 3, you're taking notes. A distracted person gets worked up about unimportant matters. That's what happens in the story with Mary and Martha. She's so distracted about impressing Jesus. Can we also step into the moment that if Jesus is in your house, you're going to want everything to be good? We're good with that, right? Because the truth is, you meet a girl in your neighborhood and you invite her over for like dessert, and you are throwing everything in the closet, right? If somebody just opened the closet, the deal would be up, right? You would be totally exposed, because the truth is, you just threw it all. Your laundry's not even done. That's in your closet. Everything is right, and I mean, come on. Moms before Thanksgiving compared to moms during Thanksgiving, that's a different reality. Am I the only one? Right? Moms before Thanksgiving, they are a general in an army, and they are telling each one of their troops what their jobs are. And once you finish the task, you must report back to the general for your next task. And the general sergeant mom, the minute somebody walks in the door, is a Hallmark story. I'm guessing by the laughs that that's true in your home too. Not in my home. My wife's always Hallmark. That's also a lie. I say that to say this. A distracted person gets worked up about unimportant matters. I would also say that they get worked up about important matters, but they get worked up beyond what's necessary. And so we want to match the matter with the appropriate amount of pressure or the appropriate amount of response. Would you agree? Lower matters get a lower response. More important matters, more significant matters, more matters that have a greater influence. Like there's certain things in your life you should get worked up over. There's certain things in your marriage that honestly you probably need a little bit more oomph on. Okay, I think that illustration made its point. You tracking with me now on how many times did that thing ding? And some of those were you, but some of those were not. Some of those were random notifications. Some of those were texts. So in about a 5-minute period, you can see I couldn't even finish a couple sentences before something came in. That is a microcosm of your life. And so we have to figure out both the principle of this sermon, but also the practicality of it. What are the things in your life that are distracting you? And I can give you one. I can't give you all of them because I don't know what's in your home. But everybody hold up this right now. Everybody hold up this right now. Got it? I want you to say this is a tool. And if it runs my life, I'm a tool. Amen? Amen? Now, I'll be the first one to say this is an issue in my home. This is an issue. Right now, I'll be as transparent as possible. We're in therapy. This is not the only thing that we're talking about. We're not like, we need to find a therapist. iPhone's a problem. But this is as we're working through several matters, immediate family, extended family, long history. We're working through so many different things, my wife and I. Because we believe in that, and we believe that if you get help, you're not weak, you are strong, and you have courage. And as we work through that, this is a thing that has come up in several different occasions. And so I'm just telling you, you need to know that this is a distraction, and it is, and I know you're defensive about it, and I know we all get defensive about it, but we need to bring it to the forefront, because if we can't figure this thing out, listen, none of us, all of us would say right now, like we would never want a phone to get in the way of a healthy marriage. All of us would say we don't want to get any screen to get in the way between us and our kids, or us and our family and friends, right? Every one of us would say that, right? Raise your hand real high. You would say that, right? If you don't want to raise your hand to that, then you're probably going to hate this message. All of us want that, but we get defensive to talk about it. You see the disconnect? That's the enemy's work. If you want something in your life, but you're defensive to talk about it, that's the enemy in your life. Let me say that again. If you want something in your life, but you're defensive to talk about it, that's the enemy working in your life every single time. That principle works for everything. If you want to love your wife well, but you're defensive to talk about how to love her better because she has some things to talk to you about, that's the enemy working in your life. If you want better friends, but you're scared to talk to your friends about how to move beyond the surface, that's the enemy working in your life. If you want something in your heart, and yet you have fear around how to get there, that's the enemy working in your life. You know why? Because a distracted person is easily led by the wrong influences, and a distracted person gets worked up about unimportant things. It's why, lean in for just a second, it's why you've picked things that are not in proximity to you to get upset about. Because you're too scared to deal with the things that are immediate to you. And so as a result, you have to convince yourself that you're a moral individual, and so you have to take moral stances on things that are far beyond your responsibility. And you know why? You're distracting yourself from the fact that God has given you some things, stewardship over some things that are immediate in your life. And you will not take an account for what your stance was on the war in Russia and Ukraine. You won't give an account for what your stance is on things that God did not give you stewardship over. You tracking with me on this? But we do, you know why we do that? Because if he can get us distracted, it's also what the news' strategy is. If it can get you distracted, if it can get you divided, what's the saying? A house divided against itself will not what? That's true in our country, and you know that. You see it right now. That's also true in your home. And I don't mean just divided in terms of how we see things. I mean divided in terms of how we interact. A house divided. If all 5 of my family members in my home are all distracted by screens and temporarily happy in the moment, we will have relationship problems in the long haul. Because the enemy has us right where he wants us. We don't live in those spaces where God can remind us that we're forgiven. We don't live in those. We don't enter into those spaces where God reminds us that we're loved and we're healed. We don't live in those spaces where we get to allow our embittered heart to settle the noise, right? And so when Martha sees Mary sitting at Jesus' feet, we get all worked up, and Jesus just reminds Mary the most important thing in this moment. The most important thing in this moment is that your guest just wants you to sit before him. And your guest just happens to be the God of the universe. This holiday season, we all have a guest. My suggestion would be he's all invited into each and every one of your homes. And I'm here to tell you, based on this text, something very, very important. Is it okay to clean your house? Is it okay to have your decor? Is it okay to make sure that your tree matches that little Pinterest thing that you saw last week? Yes, yes, and maybe. It is. All of those things are okay. But if those things distract you from the heart of God, you've missed the point of Christmas. And I'm speaking to you, Martha. And I know that a great burden of the holiday season is on your hard work. And yet I say to you, you deserve the point of Christmas in your heart too. And I say that to you because the distraction of all of the tasks can take your eyes away, albeit subtly, away from what matters most. You deserve the peace of Jesus this Christmas, Martha. You deserve the hope of Christmas this season, Martha. You deserve all that comes with reminding yourself that the God of the universe pursued you, loved you, and saved you, and this is not your home anymore. You live for something eternal. So keep doing the good things. Just don't lose sight of the great thing. Every one of us reminded. Listen to what the psalmist writes in Psalm 86, verse 11. Teach me your way, Lord, that I may rely on your faithfulness. Give me an undivided heart, that I may fear your name. I ask you this morning, honestly, transparently, just for you to consider, is my heart divided? Is there anything else right now in this moment, in this season of my life, whether things are good, things are bad, you're struggling, or you're on a high? Is your heart divided? Is it set on good things and not the great thing? Are the good things competing with the great thing? Or does the great thing inform the good things of the why, of what matters most? I'm not asking you not to do good things. I'm asking you to remind yourself daily, perhaps multiple times throughout the day, the why behind you, what you do every single day. And when you do those good things, to remember the perspective that we are to keep, so that you, Martha, get to experience Christmas and all that it was meant to be. Paul will write to Timothy, a young pastor, and he writes similar things, different culture, different context. Timothy has a purpose to pastor. It's a leadership conversation. But I believe that part of the reason that you struggle, Martha's in the room, is because you have leadership qualities. And you may be like, whoa. You ever try to get me on stage? I want nothing to do with it. I want to be behind the scenes. But I would tell you the reason you're a leader is because we need you in how our society functions. So let me just read to you this text, a leadership conversation between Paul and a young pastor named Timothy. In 1 Timothy chapter 4, he says this: be diligent in these matters. These matters is after 4 chapters of reminding him of what it means to contend for the faith, try to focus on the great things and not just the good things. Be diligent in these matters. Give yourself wholly to them. That means leave nothing back from God. Give them all that you have. Give yourself wholly to them so that everyone may see your progress. Not progress in terms of getting the tree done. Not progress in terms of you have the cutest house ever. Not progress in terms of, making sure that your lights are up on the house. Progress in the internal reality of where your soul is. That's the progress he's talking about. It's the thing that matters most. The thing that God wants to protect your heart and your soul and your mind, because out of the overflow of all of those things comes the external character that everybody sees. The focus is for you to give wholly all of you to them so that everyone may see your progress and watch your life and your doctrine closely. That's what you believe in and how you live. Persevere in them, because if you do, you will both, listen to this, save both yourself and your hearers. Here's what this is saying. Listen to me for a second. You could spend your life trying to have the cutest house, the most robust lights, giving your kids the best gift, being the cheeriest in public all the time, and have a rotten soul. And what I would say is that's going to come out as your character is tested, and that's going to be a negative witness to those around you. Or you get that thing right, first between you and God, and you get before him anytime that thing gets off track. Anytime you can start to feel that heart getting hard. And that could be in them. Listen, for me, it doesn't take long. I can have coffee with Jesus in the morning and by noon be ready to punch somebody in the throat. You tracking with me on that? It takes one drive on the 5. That should be a country song, by the way. It doesn't take long. Where we need to come back Why? To the God of heaven who loves us, who reminds us of who we are, who reminds us, listen to me, that you are secure. Listen to me. You are loved. You are healed. And you have a hope in heaven that is coming. And in those securities, you can approach whatever it is that's in front of you, whatever challenge, whatever task, or lists of tasks with the why behind the what. Do the good things. Just don't lose sight of the great thing. Give yourself wholly to the great thing that is the presence of Jesus, because it's only in the presence of Jesus that you and I have the opportunity to be transformed, so that when we take on whatever it is that is in front of us, it's not those things that people notice. It's the character and the heart of who we are. And over time, they begin to see that person's different. I want to draw close to them because they don't have a cute house. They have an amazing character. And I've got to know why. And what shines in them isn't what's on the outside. It's 100% what's on the inside. And it's in those moments you get to point them to what matters most. That, my friends, is what Christmas is all about. That's what made the wise men travel that distance to visit Jesus, because they followed the light. And at the end of that light, they found God with skin on, humble in a manger. While everyone else missed him, they followed the light. So I would ask you first to follow the light this holiday season. And as you do, you know what you become? The light for somebody else. If you're taking notes, you can write this down. Being close to God is essential to who you are. You were made to be close to God. You were made for his presence. And you being in his presence is his greatest joy. It's why he sent Jesus. That's not the birth story, that's the resurrection story. But in order to understand Christmas, you must understand death and resurrection. You were created to be close to God. And finally, I'm here to remind you, the fifth pointer in your note sheet is this: God has determined your life is too significant to be distracted. What will you miss if you're distracted? How many cat videos can you watch? How many videos can you scroll through? We've all done it. Scrolling, look at the watch and going, what am I doing? Just a couple more. You, listen to me. This is not about guilt. This is about empowering you. Listen, your life is too significant to be distracted. There's not a person in this room. There's not a gift mix in this room. There's not a story in this room where this isn't true. Your life is too important to be distracted. It's too important. It matters too much. God has given you stewardship over things that only you get stewardship over. It is too important to be distracted. It's time to get focused. It's time to get a hold of our lives. It's time to get our eyes back on the one that lifted us out of the water, so we get to see and experience miraculous things like Peter, beautiful moments like Mary, and grace-filled moments like the prodigal son. All of us, regardless of our story, your life is too significant to be distracted. I remind you of this as the band comes up. Yesterday, there's so many stories that we could tell. I just want to tell one of them. Love Local. For those who weren't here yesterday, it was a Christmas experience for kids, under-resourced families in our community. We had 500 registered, or 476 registered, and I don't know the exact number that came, but it was a significant number of kids, and they got pictures of Santa and wrote letters with Santa, and they got to do crafts, and it was so fun. And they got in line, and they came in here, and the video you could see they were playing different youth group games, and we had our students inviting middle school kids and high school kids to youth group, and so there was a relational dynamic. It was really cool. And then they would walk into that room, and I'm telling you, that room was transformed into a van store. It was insane. We had over 500 pairs of Vans. There was so many clothes in there. It was beautiful. And as they walked out of that door and they came out to here, there was jumpies, and on the right, there was just tables and tables and tables of food. There was cookies and barbecuers galore, and there was hamburgers and hot dogs. And one of the kids came out of here, and he had shoes in his hand, and he's got his clothes stacked up. I think they got 2 items on top of their shoes. And so he's walking. He's probably 4 or 5. He can barely, but he wants to handle his stuff. Hey, nobody touching my stuff. Like I will carry it. I'm not sure if I'll make it out the door, but I'm gonna carry it. So he's walking around, and he's got the biggest smile on his face, and he gets around this corner and to the door, and he sees the jumpy, and he sees the barbecue guys, and his eyes get wide. And he goes, "Oh my gosh, Jesus is real." Hey, listen to me. Be the life and be the light that other people say, "Oh my gosh, Jesus is real." Let's pray. God, we thank you. We thank you that in this moment, that if we reflect, not on the struggle that we face, but on the work that you've done around us, in us, God, if we would set our eyes on that for just these next couple of moments, to reflect, to find ourselves in this space where maybe even we need to be challenged, that this would be a moment where Christmas would infiltrate this room, and all that you meant it to be, and all that it was intended for. Meet us here. We love you. We say these things in Jesus' name. Amen.